Hey everybody, Jonathan Crow, Director of Community here at Ninja One. Thank you so much for jumping on this stream, which we kind of give you a heads up on with pretty early notice. This is directed towards our MSP, really owners and leaders, that portion of our community, and hopefully you'll find this interesting and useful. Usually I have someone much smarter than me here to deflect off of and to ask questions of and all that stuff. I'm flying solo today, so go ahead and please be gentle, be kind. I'm just kidding. You should totally um, operate as you always do, with great questions and great interaction in the chat. So, to give you a little background about what we're going to be talking about, one of the biggest questions or one of the biggest challenges we hear our MSP leaders, and again, more of the owners talking about, is differentiation. How do they set themselves apart when, let's be honest, the market is crowded, it is super commoditized, and I'm sure a lot of you folks have competitors who are more than willing to undercut you and say they're offering the same thing. How do you educate buyers, potential buyers, who really can't tell the difference? They're not very savvy when it comes to IT and technology in general at all times. How do you set yourself apart? So this is, I wanted to share this with you. This is a presentation I actually put together. I'm repurposing, to be completely honest with you. In which case, if you're an MSP owner and you're doing some marketing, you should be repurposing too. So trying to practice what I preach here. I gave a talk on this at our Austin HQ maybe like 3 weeks ago. And there was a MSP mastermind peer group that was meeting there out of the Ninja One office. And so I went down there and was able to give this talk there. And then I also went to Robin Robbins, that event in Nashville a couple weeks ago, and delivered this there too. And this is the version of that deck that I'm going to be sharing with you, and you'll see why I'm calling that out in just a few. I'm going to be going through some examples of actual MSP websites. I like doing this. This is what I do in my spare time because, and I'm sure that says a lot about me. I like looking at MSP websites, seeing what folks are doing, taking note of interesting new approaches that people are taking with their marketing and their messaging. And a lot of the times there is nothing new or interesting. And I say this in the most with the most empathy, because this is not like your full-time job. This stuff's hard to do well anyway. But I'm going to show you a couple examples that are real world examples of MSP sites, and we're going to use those to kind of kick off some discussion. But I want you to be able to ask questions at any time. Let me know, like, what are you doing too? Are some of the things we're going to be talking about some things that you're already doing? Are they things that you've tried and hasn't worked out? I want to know. I'm always interested. And then also, like, I'm going to be showing you some examples based around Nashville. If someone living in the US, because we don't need any more attention drawn to the fact that I am a one language speaking ignorant American, based in the US, if you want me to look live and see some examples of sites, other MSP websites based in your market, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll pick like the first one. But let's go ahead and get started while you guys are doing that. And let's look at Nashville. So here, let's pull up the deck here. All right, there I am, the little guy in the corner. All right, I call this one League of Your Own. I do have a baseball quote, only limited to one, so no worries if you're not into the sports balls. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about how to address that big challenge. How do you set yourself apart right from the beginning? You know, this is what it all comes down to. And you can do this maybe when it comes to having one-on-one conversations, when it comes to getting referrals. I think there's a big reason why 90% of deals with a lot of MSPs, our customers, come from referrals. I'm going to give you some examples of folks setting the stage earlier than that to show how they're different and why they're the right fit for prospective clients. Okay, so this is what I was talking about with Nashville, right? We're going to look at this example here. And again, I'm happy to do this live with another local market if someone wants to throw that in the chat. But here's Nashville. So Nashville, pretty good example. major city. I don't think it's top 10, although population wise, it's growing all the time, right? Crowded market. And let's look at some of these sites that come up. So I'm perusing around. I'm a prospective buyer. This is the kind of thing I'm seeing. Everything's emphasizing it is an IT solution based in Nashville. We even get to this one example, for example. Why is this one the best? Well, because we're in Nashville. We're local, which totally, that's a legitimate reason to be a good solution, a good fit for someone. You are there locally and you're able to respond to them. You also get them, you're from the same community. Nothing wrong with this. I'm just bringing up these all these similar screenshots, these similar homepages, to make the point that if you're a company who's just looking for IT help, how in the world are you supposed to tell the difference between any of these providers, right? This is pretty common. So I did start noticing the appearance of one word that came up a lot with websites, MSP websites in particular, sorry. And that word is trust. And I have a theory behind why this is. And my theory is not earth-shattering. My theory is something that we all intuitively know, is that in business, it really comes down to feeling good about a person. You gotta have it in your gut. You just like the person. You feel good about the person that you're going to do business with. And I think another way to frame that is you really have to trust them. So that's the kind of like feel good, warm and fuzzy, squishy part of it. There's actually numbers behind this too. Once a company gains trust, you're in, right? Like the prospect's more likely to buy. They're more likely to stick around. You're more likely to retain them, and they're more likely to give you those referrals that are so crucial to MSPs in particular. They're also more likely to go up and be your advocates and defend you. So it really kind of unlocks everything. Not only that, here's a big important point. At the beginning, we talked about how not only is it a challenge to stand out in a crowded market, you're going to have a lot of competitors that are more than willing to undercut you, solely compete on price. And I think this is a big point. If your prospects and your customers actually trust you, survey says they're more willing to pay a premium. So that kind of gives you some armor against being undercut. On the flip side, once you lose trust, I mean, we all know this too, right? I'm sure everyone here on the call has lost customers, and you can kind of, maybe you get surprised, and a lot of times you're not necessarily surprised. You kind of see it coming. Once you get a whiff of you've lost their trust, they've got one foot out the door. Oh, thanks, Tony. I appreciate that with the audio note. Hopefully that will cease to be the case. I'll continue working. I'll keep an eye on it. Thanks for the heads up. All right. So not only does it apply to customers and prospects, it applies to employees too, which, I mean, hey, when we're talking about a crowded market, you're not just competing for prospects, you're competing for talent, right? So trust is huge for that too. Okay. And thanks, Mike. Tony, hopefully this isn't an issue for you anymore. Okay, so yeah, so long story short, the business that earns the trust the quickest wins. And yeah, when I gave this presentation in person to an MSP audience, you guys are a little different, right? Like hopefully we as Ninja, myself personally, but also just the Ninja crew overall, hopefully we have made our case that we are to be trusted. You guys are customers. You're members of the community. Hopefully you see that, and we're reinforcing that every day. But when I'm talking to an audience that doesn't necessarily know Ninja the way that you guys know Ninja, I felt compelled to point this out. Okay, yeah, you got a vendor talking to you about trust. That's the elephant in the room. We can all make a joke about it. You guys are salty. You've been burned by other vendors in the space. Totally get it. We are all sus. It's absolutely true. We've earned it. Let's be real. But the reason I bring this up is not just to make my jokes and have my funny gif, although I really like that one. It's to bring up the slide and make the point that like we at Ninja, I feel like we have a similar challenge to what you do as an MSP. So like we've got the folks here that are active in the chat. Thank you for being active. I asked this question when I was presenting to you in person. My sense is that for the most part, when you're getting a new client, you're not their first rodeo. So I don't know if that's true in the chat, if that rings true. You know, most of the clients that you get, they've had an MSP before. And so your job isn't necessarily to tell them, explain what an MSP is or what it does, although depending on who they work with, maybe maybe they do need some education. Your job is more along the lines of, look, we get it. You've come from a bad situation. That's why you're talking with us. We need to convince you that it's okay to love again. We need to convince you that we're going to be different, right? It's the same thing that Ninja has. The majority of our customers, we're not their first RMM. We don't need to educate them on what an RMM does or is. A lot of times we don't even need to educate them about who Ninja is because they know about us already. We need to make this point that, hey, you're coming from a situation you obviously wanted to get out of. We need to convince you that we're going to be different and worth the time of migrating. So then I kind of brag a little bit about you all in the community and pull some things off Slack and Discord to show that we've really acknowledged that challenge and we've really tried to build up trust. And you guys have commented on how you appreciate the Discord and accessibility and everything. I always appreciate you all keeping us honest too. So thank you for everything. Okay, so let's go back into the what you can actually take away from this. I'm going to give you basically a loose framework here to operate with, and hopefully get you just thinking about your current site and maybe even beyond your site, your messaging overall, some of your approaches. And I think there's going to be a few practical things that you can walk away from this with. That's kind of like to-do items. So overall, if we agree that, okay, yeah, gaining trust is important. We got to do that as quick as possible. I've got 3 questions for you to look at your site and think about how you're talking with prospects and focus on how you're answering these 3 questions. So the first one, this is kind of like table stakes. How can I trust that you'll do the correct thing? That you actually know what you're doing, that you're legit. That is something where I see, that's kind of like, if we think about this in a maturity stages, I see this as being what a lot of MSPs focus on with their website and with their kind of messaging and everything is this first level. But again, I think this is kind of like table stakes. Second one, going a little bit deeper. So once they're like, okay, this is a legitimate business, they're not going to completely wreck my network. Like, I believe that they are legit and they'll do the correct thing. I want to know that they are going to do the right thing, not just for themselves, but for me too. So I need to feel like there's a connection there, that we have interests that are aligned, maybe even values that are aligned. And we're going to get into what that means a little bit more in just a second. And then lastly, this important question, right? Like, just answer it directly. How can I trust that you're not going to be like the last guys? I left them for a reason, right? I don't want to go through that pain again. Okay, so we're going to go through each of those things, 3 things. I'm going to pull up some specific examples. So to answer this question, again, I think it's the thing that people are kind of used to answering or trying to prove the most, and they do that through social proof, right? And so in the chat, I'll give you a couple of seconds if you want to answer in, like, what are the most common things that you see and maybe that you use on your site too to show, like, hey, we're a valid business, we're legit. Selfies with celebs, maybe. Not all at once. Yeah, let's just show them. Okay, we all know what these are, right? It's testimonials, reviews, showing your customer logos. You see this a lot, showing the number of customers you have, systems under management, showing like the size, how many years in business, CSAT, other metrics, awards, as seen on TV, all that stuff. Okay, so here's a visual example of this, right? Like we see this all over the place. Having these numbers are great because they show like, okay, you've got a large number of customers. If you got that, that shows that you're at least valid up to a certain point, right? Having 25 years in business, you're well established. If you were completely distrustful or didn't know what you're doing, would you be in the business that long? Probably not. So it's a good social signal that you're trustworthy. The thing about these numbers, though, they are kind of all relative because 25 years in business seems impressive. And then the next person has 36. Does that really make a difference or not? It may for a reader just popping in and looking to spot any kind of reason to pick one choice over another. We also have classic, the customer satisfaction score. Down at the bottom, though, here, this example, VC3, they add us a couple of other things. The average reduction in IT incidents is kind of interesting because these other stats like client satisfaction, number of years in business, etc., those are all things that refer back to the MSP. And average reduction in IT incidents kind of applies to that too, but it's a little bit different. That's reflecting like an outcome for the customer, for the client. And I think that that's an interesting thing that people can do even more directly and effectively. Before we get into that, just one other example here. Again, number of clients, number of projects, number of employees, all these things that can solidify like, hey, we're legit. The other challenge here is like, well, if you're just getting started and you don't have these astronomical numbers, then what do? You got to pull other levers. I mean, so here we have another example of like, well, they've got these impressive logos, and maybe any of these, for the most part, might not mean something to anyone, right? But all it takes is one. So if they look through this and they see like, oh yeah, Expedia, I get that, like, that may move them, especially if this prospective client is in the same vertical or space as one of these logos. That can make a difference. Or it could just be one logo that like everybody in your area knows, right? Like Sun River going with the I believe this is the minor league baseball team in Nashville. That may mean something. They're like, oh yeah, the sounds okay. It gives them like an instant little credibility boost. So one potential piece of homework is to look at your list of, man, I wish we had these as clients, businesses in your area, and add this to a consideration of it. Like, what's one logo that it still has to fit in your ICP, obviously, but what's a logo that may mean a lot, and what would it look like if you were actually just more intentional about going after those folks? So just something to think about. Okay, again, like if you can go to the testimonial route. I know it can be difficult in some cases, especially depending on the vertical, of getting a company to actually approve putting their logo on your site. Ninja has this issue too. Likewise, for people giving testimonials, sometimes they don't want to have their specific business listed. You just got to work with what you can do and work with what you got. And so in this case, we've got real people, real faces, but of course you also see instances where MSPs are able to include a quote, and they'll say things like manager at a telecom firm or something like that, or a bank. But just work with what you got. But going a level deeper, that's kind of like all the table stakes stuff. Going a level deeper, how can I trust that you're going to do the right thing? Going back to this one example that we pulled, right? Like, well, a lot of the most common answer I think I get to that question when I look at a site is that we're going to do the right thing. You can trust that with us because we are in the same community. We're local to you. We get you. We're from Nashville. You're from Nashville. Like we get you. And that's totally valid. And then you can double down on that by showing, you contribute to the community in terms of you're voted a best place to work. You contribute, you give back in various ways. I mean, to that end, you've got insight. This is one of the a huge MSP, and so that's why these numbers are so large. But I mean, they actually are able to brag about how much they give back and how much in the causes that they donate to. And so that can kind of give you another example of if you're on the fence, if you're trying to decide between two options and you see that, hey, these folks are aligned to my core values, that can certainly have an impact on a decision. Okay, and Sono, number one MSP on the 2023 list, the MSP 501 list. Huge amount of revenue, mind-boggling amount of employees, headquartered in Chicago. This goes into the example, going back to the social proof idea, the example of stats and numbers, the social proof stuff. They are taking a little bit of a different approach. And I've noticed something when I look at larger MSP websites, I start noticing a different word that starts appearing all the time. And that word is outcomes. And so they are not just focused on touting their own CSAT scores, their own company size. What they are most concerned with is showing, hey, we help our clients achieve business outcomes. Here are stats related to those. So if you take away anything from this session, this is the thing to take away. Go look at your current client base. And if you specialize in a vertical, awesome. This will be more straightforward. But even if you don't specialize in one, just pick one of the best ones that you have and start thinking about what are the stats that they care about from a business outcome perspective. What are their metrics? What are their outcomes, right? Start touting how, even if you are, IT is basically a supplemental, almost a tangent role in this, you can still have an opportunity to cite them. So here's one example of that. And Sono is citing that they've been able to help 24 million constituents access government platforms. Right. And so like for governments, looking at that, what do governments care about? They don't, I mean, they care about your CSAT, but knowing that that Insono has helped other local governments get their platforms up and running and be accessible to their local constituents, that's a big deal, right? Same thing, online banking customers connected. And again, like this may be a little bit hard, 64 billion retail transactions supported, that sort of thing. Like these numbers are a little hyperbolic. So let's go to another example. This is Pliancy. Pliancy is also very different in a lot of ways, and I think it's totally a site worth checking out. We've talked with Marcus Olson, the founder, at a couple of our summits, and he's very opinionated and very outspoken about a lot of things. It's very interesting, but their model is different. They have a clear vertical. They are focusing on startups and VC firms because VC firms fund startups, right? And so if you look at the logos they throw out down here, those aren't going to mean much to a lot of folks, but for people in the tech space, in the startup world, in the VC world, these are their peers. In some cases, they're aspirational peers, right? And even the language here too, people-centric IT for today's change makers. Like it's definitely messaging that's targeted specifically to the startup and that kind of like persona, right? We offer IT solutions to bold emerging companies. So they take it a step further. So that's their messaging is already starting to differentiate. And then again, this concept of what are the outcomes and the metrics that your prospective clients care about, that they're shooting for themselves, that you can highlight, that you've helped your customers actually achieve. So in Plancy's case, they've helped 75 and more, over 75 of their clients go from pre-seed to seed stage. They have helped their VC firms raise 5.7 billion in rounds. They support over 60 VC firms. So this is a pretty specific example. Like, let's say you went into, I don't know, construction. Like, what would that look like? What would a stat that a construction client would care about, projects completed, et cetera? What's something like that you can start to highlight and get into? And what I like about this is not only is it going to signal that you not only can do IT well, but that you get this prospective client's business and you can help their business perform better. we're always talking about how do you become a trusted advisor, right? How do you move from talking about speeds and feeds, and how do you get into more of these like strategic business discussions? Um, and this totally sets the stage for it, because you are coming in, you're talking about outcomes that they care about. It's going to make it easier for when later on, when you've onboarded them and you're trying to do a QBR and you're trying to get that strategic level discussion going, it's going to make it easier because you've already touched on it, right? So I don't know what this looks like for you exactly in terms of your own verticals, but it's something worth thinking about. And I like it as an example because it's a very tangible, very attackable type of thing that you can do. Find out what one of those outcomes is. Um, Start just like highlighting. It doesn't even have to be your homepage right away. You could start with like LinkedIn outreach or an email. Test it out. If people start responding to it, toss it on the homepage and double down on what's working. Okay, so obviously, like the vertical specialization really does kind of unlock a lot of opportunities. This is dedicated IT. They're a Ninja customer. Um, Large, based in Florida. They specialize in healthcare, senior living. And they go beyond just the social proof that we were talking about, and they really bake it into their whole site. They're talking about offering not just better IT experiences, they're talking about helping you as a healthcare provider provide better patient experiences, right? So like they're adopting the language and the messaging and the goals of their client base, and they're baking that into everything on their site and all their messaging, right? You may not be able to do that right away today if you don't have a clear vertical you specialize in, but you might be able to start sprinkling this in and trying it out. It doesn't have to be your whole site or even your homepage. It could be certain landing pages, the other reason I like bringing up these real sites is it gives you an opportunity. You can go to dedicated IT right now and surf around their site, and pull out some examples. They'll probably give you some ideas. Okay, so last one. How can I trust that you won't be like the last guys? Again, going back to Insono, this is something that a lot of those super large players do. Like they kind of go and contort themselves in a way to say, hey, we're not your average managed services provider. In some cases, people like Pliancy will say they don't call themselves an MSP. They really position themselves more to be a a strategic IT consultant. So Insono is doing this. They're basically addressing that question head on. They know that a lot of their clients are coming to them because they had a bad experience, and so they just want to address it right out of the gate. We talk about showing, not telling a lot. In this case, you should go out and maybe just try out going right out and saying it up front. We're different, right? And so here's another example that does the same thing. I got in a little bit of trouble at Robin Robbins because I heard that this was a line that she actively encourages, and my reaction was like, "Man, this is aggro. This is pretty aggressive." And my suggestion was, well, you could just have a customer say this for you. Get a testimonial that basically says the same thing, right? Oh yeah, links are disappearing. Okay, we'll work on that too. We'll make sure I follow up in after the stream's over. At the end of YouTube, I'll post links to things, all the sites, and we'll post it in Discord as well. So anyway, back to that point, saying aggressive statements. Maybe you just want to lean in and adopt that kind of persona, and that's cool if you do. The other way to do it is to get basically a customer to say this for you, so that way you're not coming at this. So that doesn't get attached to you. That feeling of like, wow, this is very very straightforward and aggressive. Okay, so here's another illustrative example. Nucleus, they're a company based in Canada. And they have totally leaned in this too. This is their primary goal of their marketing, is to show we're not like the last ones, right? And so they come out and they say you deserve better. Tech experts that actually care, they're prodding these pain points. A better approach to managed services. You're going to roll your eyes when you go to the site and you look at this, because they have like the standard MSP route, the Nucleus way. You're going to be like, yeah, This is the same thing. This isn't actually that different. But to, again, like kind of uninformed clients, they look at this and they may not be thinking of it that way. All they see is there's a clear distinction. Nucleus is going out of their way to say, hey, they're different. Oh yeah, Acora. This is another giant MSP. I believe they're based in Ireland. And they have gone with this big campaign. They even created basically like a Braveheart style big budget commercial. It's insane. I would love to know how much money they spent on it. But they are saying they are leading basically the charge for a new way to provide IT services. And I kind of don't understand this going against the SLA and focusing on the XLA. I like the thought behind it. I'm not sure how many prospective customers actually know or care about those acronyms. But basically, when it boils down to it, they're saying, listen, they care about the experience. They're not going to meet SLAs just for the heck of it. They're really going to measure the ultimate experience they're providing, and that's what they hold themselves accountable to. What it all boils down to is, again, they are not, for anyone who's been burned by a regular MSP that has a bad taste in their mouth, they're saying, hey, we're different. Here's what we care about. We're super passionate about it. Come on board with us. We got a better way to do it. Going back to pliancy, people you can trust. So I remember I said that they're basically saying that they're an IT consultancy. They don't call their technicians, they call them consultants. And a lot of times they are looking for talent that they're willing to pay more for, because they want them to be more consultative versus just, tier one type support. And so they really lean on this, and they do this because they think it's a good way to do business, but also because it matches with their audience, their target audience. This is how startups operate, right? Like if you look at startups and the VC and the tech world in general, think about the way that they tout their benefits. Pliancy is doing some of the same things. They're also just bold. I mean, look at this. Like Pliancy is redefining the role of IT. If you're ready to be more than a cog in the MSP machine, we want to hear from you. They focus a lot of their marketing on hiring, actually, because they've realized that this is their differentiator. It's that they have really amazing people, and so that's what they're really focused on trying to bring on board. But yeah, this goes back to the benefits thing. So they're really matching this. So if you're a startup and you're looking around and you see a IT provider that is doing things and operating the way you are, you're going to feel like, okay, they get me. I trust these guys. Another example of this that's straight from home is like talking with another MSP based in Austin who services law firms. And he was very clear that he goes out of his way to use the same language as law firms, not referring to themselves as company, but a firm. Just small things that can amount to a big difference, speaking the same language. And Matt, I see your question about the MMS announcement. And yeah, Robin's on it. She's going to find that for you. Okay. So yeah, more stuff in pliancy there. So giving you another piece of maybe homework if you want it. I think it's establishing like what's cool about focusing on these things and thinking about the signals that you're sending out. There's really a virtuous cycle that develops. So you're putting it out there like, hey, these are the types of customers that we really do great outcomes for. We are for them. This is what we care about. It's what they care about too. Once you put that out into the world, it makes you have to kind of hold yourself accountable to it. You really have to kind of align with that, right? And so it's the same thing with putting your mission statement and everything on paper. It's a great step because it actually makes it more real for you. And so once you do that, and once your prospects are seeing that, they come on board. It gets confirmed like, hey, this is the direction that we're all rowing in. This is what we all care about. This is what you expect from us. This is what we expect from you. Once that's solidified, the outcomes then, once it's generated, those become more social proof. that attracts more of that type of client who cares about those things. And the cycle just kind of repeats and repeats. It's a flywheel. But I don't think that's just true for prospects only. I think that applies to customers, to your employees, to other influencers in your space. And here's my sports ball quote. This thing is hard. It's hard to stand out, especially when you've got a day job, especially when you've got fires to fight, especially when you're just getting started and you're looking for any win you can. This stuff's hard, but I guess the encouraging, the kind of pessimistic but also encouraging way to look at this is like, man, the bar is low. Like, go look around, do an incognito search around IT services in whatever area you're in. I'm gonna go ahead. Like, I would be shocked if like 80% of the sites don't look remarkably the same, or saying the same thing. It's not that hard to stand out and to do something different. It just takes the right type of intention to do it. And hopefully this gives you a few ideas about where you could start in that direction. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is the Trust Maturity Matrix. It's a free download. You don't have to fill out any form or anything. I'm going to drop a link into the YouTube description. I'll drop a link into Discord as well. In fact, I think I can put it here in the chat. So I put this together for a different talk, and I dropped it in YouTube. I'm going to drop that in Discord as well. So this goes beyond just messaging, which is what we've been focused on, what I've been focused on with this talk, right? And it goes into some other things. In fact, let me pull it up real quick. It goes into things like your service delivery, like your account management, and it approaches it from the classic, yeah, here we go. It approaches it from the classic angle of a maturity matrix. Let me pull it up for you. Here we go. All right. So yeah, download this, and hopefully, again, this will just give you some ideas. There's some things you're going to be like, no, duh. Some things that you're already doing. But basically, we looked at this and we're like, okay, if we break things down to achieving alignment, having good communication with prospects and customers, and then giving the right type of signals, the right type of social proof, it kind of starts with the level 1 table stake stuff, and then kind of proceeds from there and gives you some more ideas about how you can optimize these things. Take a look. I would love your feedback. We never want to create this kind of stuff just to do it. We want to make sure it's actually usable and actually helpful. So would love your thoughts and feedback on this. With that, I mean, that's what I have for you. So any thoughts, questions, anything? I'm happy to hang around for a little bit longer and talk about this stuff. I love this stuff. And I'm also happy, I'll throw this out there too. For anyone on the stream, if you want a, kind of brief analysis, or like you want me to check out your site and give you any kind of suggestions, happy to do it. I may not always have super helpful, bright things to say. Every now and then I surprise myself though. All right, Matt, I see your comment about the link not working. So I have one other thing I can share. Oh yeah, there we go. There's a QR code up at the top. You can see if that works too. And Dalton, yeah. Dalton, if you're in our Discord server, which I can put a, yeah, that's exactly it. You should mention, oh, there we go. Look at Robin. Robin's behind the scenes working magic. There's a link. Let me see, there it is. Boing, boing, boing. It's up there. There's the QR code. Hopefully that works for you. Let me know if it doesn't. That is a link to join our Discord server, and you can DM me. And I would be happy to help out. And same thing, Jonas. Happy to do it. I like looking at this stuff. I've also got, I'll include a couple of links to, by this point, it's kind of older, but it's some analysis I did of great MSP websites I did a few years ago, with a blog post with like main takeaways and everything. But, I just see this as basically you care enough to go off on your own, start a business. I'm sure that once you are able, we all have the point, right? You all have the point where if you can get to this point, you're going to win the deal. Whether that's just being in person, getting the handshake, or whether that's showing, a specific type of case study, or just really having a specific type of conversation. If you can get there, you'll win. Um, I think that the big challenge is just getting to that point, right? And so, um, being a little bit more intentional and just having a couple, it doesn't take much, like having a couple of things that jump out at someone enough to get them to that next step of having a conversation. That's hopefully what this will help you do. And I'm happy to give any kind of help or suggestions. So thank you, everybody. Dalton, Jonas, I'll keep an eye out for you joining the Discord too. And you can either DM me or I'll tag you as well. And we can take a look. And last thing, so Robin added a link to feedback. And, this is something we haven't done a whole lot of recently. We used to publish a lot more helpful, on the business side of things, content for MSPs. And we've kind of shied away from it more recently. Let us know what would be good. There's so much stuff out there. I don't want to create more just to add to the noise. I want it to be actually useful and practical. But if you have certain areas that you think, man, I would love to hear from, not just someone at Ninja, not like me, but like other practitioners, other MSP owners, some consultants, things like that. Any big areas, would love to hear about it, because these types of streams we can certainly do more of, and we want to help you guys out. But with that, I think we'll close this one out. And I just want to thank everybody again. I love doing these streams, love seeing everybody jump in. Hopefully they're helpful. We got a couple of other events that are coming up. I believe we have a partner office hours happening tomorrow. So back to the usual Ninja focused stuff. And then Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's next week. We have another stream where Jeff Hunter, our field CTO, is going to be coming back on. Jeff's a wizard with Ninja. He's going to be diving into how to get more data and analysis of patching using the Ninja One API. So he's going to get nice and nerdy with you all. That's going to be, if you go into Discord, you'll see the link to that. I believe it's going to be next Tuesday. And yes, thanks, Robin. We got partner office hours tomorrow, 4/17. So again, partner office hours, if you're new to Ninja, or even if you're not new, and you've got some techs who are new to it, great place to kind of get some overviews, but also ask any kind of questions and get those answered live. And Jeff Hunter, how to analyze patching data like a Ninja, is going to be on 4/23, April 23rd for those of you in EMEA. Thank you, everybody, once again. This is fun, and looking forward to following up with you. Oh, yes, Robin. Yes, you can always go to ninja1.com events to check out what's coming up too. All right, everybody, have a good one. Take care.